When the Walker family first moved into Maplewood Lane, everything about them seemed almost too perfect. A young couple in their mid-30s, Jacob and Melissa, with their 3 children, Evan, Grace, and little Noah, looked like they had walked straight out of a family magazine. They had warm smiles, waved at everyone, and within a week were hosting a backyard barbecue for the entire cul-de-sac. Across the street lived the Harris family, Daniel and Claire, with 2 kids of their own, Maya and Lucas. The kids were close in age, which meant playdates happened almost immediately. Parents chatted in driveways, traded recipes, and swapped casual favors like watering plants or borrowing a cup of sugar. For weeks, Maplewood Lane buzzed with warmth. The Walkers seemed like the perfect addition to the neighborhood, until little oddities started piling up. First, it was small things. Claire ordered a package of kitchen towels, never arrived. Daniel swore he had seen the delivery truck stop at their house. Then, Mrs. Patel down the street complained that the toy set she'd ordered for her granddaughter had been marked delivered but never appeared. At first, everyone blamed the delivery companies. After all, packages went missing all the time. But then suspicions crept in when one of the kids spotted Grace Walker riding a brand new pink scooter that looked exactly like the one Mrs. Patel had ordered. "That's strange," Claire whispered to Daniel one evening as they watched the kids play outside. "Didn't Mrs. Patel say her scooter never showed up?" Daniel frowned. "Yeah, and look at Melissa's new cardigan. Isn't that the one Karen ordered? She's been complaining about it being lost for 2 weeks." Once the seed of doubt was planted, it grew fast. Neighbors started watching closely. And the more they looked, the more patterns emerged. The Walkers' kids had toys suspiciously identical to items that had gone missing. Melissa wore dresses that others had claimed never arrived. Even Jacob's new watch looked eerily similar to one Daniel had ordered months back. By the end of 2 months, whispers spread like wildfire. Nobody wanted to accuse anyone outright, not without proof, but the truth was becoming undeniable. The Walkers weren't just unlucky. They were bold package thieves, hiding in plain sight while flaunting their stolen goods. The tension on Maplewood Lane grew thicker each day. Smiles became forced. Conversations shorter. And while the Walkers still greeted everyone like nothing was wrong, the rest of the neighborhood began meeting in hushed groups, planning what to do. Finally, one chilly autumn evening, Daniel called a secret meeting in his garage. 8 families gathered, frustrated, angry, and fed up. That's when the idea of revenge was born. "Let's hit them where it hurts," Mrs. Patel said firmly. "If they're going to keep stealing from us, let's give them something to steal." A mischievous plan began to form, a series of fake packages, planted one after another, each designed to frustrate and embarrass the Walkers. And so, the neighborhood revenge pact was sealed. The garage meeting ended with more laughter than anyone expected. At first, the neighborhood had gathered full of frustration and suspicion. But once Mrs. Patel suggested baiting the Walkers with fake deliveries, the atmosphere shifted. Suddenly, everyone had ideas, and it almost felt like they were planning a prank instead of justice. Claire Harris was the one to keep everyone on track. "Listen," she said, standing by the workbench. "We can't just embarrass them for the fun of it. They've been stealing from all of us. This is about making a point so they stop." Her husband Daniel nodded. "Exactly. We'll start small. Random junk. Nothing expensive. Let's see if they bite." The first package was ordered by Mr. Green, who lived 2 doors down. He bought a set of neon socks, 6 pairs for under $10. He had it shipped directly to his house, but instead of picking it up immediately, he left the brown box sitting right on the porch. It didn't take long. That afternoon, Claire, sipping coffee at her kitchen window, saw Jacob Walker casually cross the street. He glanced around, picked up the package, and walked back as though he owned it. Claire nearly choked on her drink. The next day, Grace Walker strutted around in a pair of blinding neon green socks. Daniel had to stifle his laugh when he spotted them. "Well," he whispered, "that didn't take long." The neighborhood began to grow bolder. Package 2 was ordered by the Patels, a bundle of cheap, gaudy plastic jewelry from a clearance website. The bracelets, rings, and oversized earrings looked like something from a kid's party favor bag. Once again, the box sat temptingly on their porch. Melissa Walker took that bait herself. Later that evening, at a casual neighborhood walk, she showed up wearing a chunky, bright purple necklace that clashed horribly with her outfit. The neighbors exchanged looks, but kept their laughter hidden. "That's 2 for 2, Daniel muttered to Claire. By the 3rd week, the Walkers had unknowingly made themselves the stars of Maplewood Lane's running inside joke. Package 3 contained 10 whoopee cushions, ordered by the Greens, who could barely contain their giggles as they set the trap. Sure enough, Evan and Lucas saw the Walker kids playing in the yard later, gleefully bouncing on the pink rubber toys, the sound of rude noises echoing across the street. This time, Claire and Daniel didn't even try to hide their amusement. Claire had to excuse herself to the kitchen just to laugh without being noticed. By now, the Walkers weren't even hiding their discoveries. They strutted around in the neighborhood, their kids flaunting toys, Melissa wearing cheap jewelry, Jacob showing off items that had mysteriously arrived. It was bold, almost daring, and yet, everyone else on Maplewood Lane knew the truth. The Walkers were walking straight into the trap. Package 4 was the most devious yet. Mrs. Patel ordered 20 rubber chickens, each one squeaked loudly when squeezed. The day the Walkers stole that box, the entire block heard the chaos. Squeak.
Squeak. Squeak.
The Walker kids ran up and down their driveway, each holding a rubber chicken, the sound carrying for blocks. Melissa tried to laugh it off, but the sight of her children fighting over squeaky chickens was more humiliating than she realized. The neighbors pretended not to notice, but behind closed doors, they were in stitches. The Walkers had no idea they were being set up. And by now, the neighborhood's patience was wearing thin. The jokes had been funny, yes, but the point hadn't yet landed. Claire reminded everyone during their next secret gathering. We've proven they'll take anything. We've made them look ridiculous. But they still think they're getting away with it. If we want to end this, we need to make it unforgettable. That's when Mr. Green leaned forward with a grin. One last package. A big one. Something they'll never forget. The room went quiet for a beat before Mrs. Patel whispered, almost reverently, "A glitter bomb." The group exchanged glances and slowly, wicked smiles spread across every face. 5 packages, Daniel confirmed. 4 jokes, and the 5th? That's our finale. The neighborhood pact grew stronger that night. Revenge was no longer a plan, it was a countdown. By the time the 4th fake package had been stolen, Maplewood Lane had transformed into something it had never been before, a community bound not just by proximity, but by a shared mission. For years, the families had lived side by side, exchanging polite greetings, attending the occasional cookout, and helping one another in the casual way neighbors do. But now, with the Walkers as their common enemy, they were united in a way that felt almost thrilling. In whispered conversations at driveways, in secret text chains, and during late-night garage meetings, the neighborhood became a team. And the Walkers had no clue. Jacob and Melissa seemed oblivious to the growing hostility. If anything, they carried themselves with more confidence than ever. Jacob strutted around in his new sneakers, the same pair Daniel Harris had intentionally ordered and left out just to test him. Melissa started bragging about their good fortune and how she'd found some amazing deals online. The kids flaunted their squeaky chickens and neon socks without shame, laughing and playing loudly, as though daring anyone to say something. The more they flaunted, the more it burned the neighbors. But instead of lashing out, the block kept smiling politely, hiding their rage under layers of patience. Because they knew the endgame was near. The Harris family's garage became the unofficial headquarters. Neighbors dropped by at odd hours, carrying folding chairs, bags of chips, and an almost giddy energy. "Did you see Melissa yesterday?" Mrs. Patel whispered one night, clutching her tea. "Wearing those horrible purple earrings like she was a queen." I nearly burst out laughing. "Oh, that was nothing," added Karen Green. "Jacob had the nerve to tell me I should try the site he uses for shopping. As if he's not stealing half his wardrobe from us." Laughter echoed through the garage. For the first time in weeks, anger turned to joy. The neighbors weren't victims anymore, they were conspirators. And that bond made them stronger. With every prank package, anticipation grew. The kids, though unaware of the full plan, started to notice the energy. Maya and Lucas Harris whispered to each other about the weird stuff showing up at the Walker's house. Even little Noah Walker asked his mom why they suddenly had so many funny toys. But Melissa always brushed it off with a smile. "Lucky, aren't we?" she'd say. The neighbors exchanged knowing glances every time they heard her. Lucky, indeed. Finally, the day came when the plan moved to its final phase. Claire Harris stood in her kitchen, phone buzzing with a message from Mrs. Patel. "It's ordered. Delivery Friday." The glitter bomb. Not just one, but several. 5 households had agreed to chip in, each ordering their own version, spring-loaded tubes, boxes filled with fine powder, even one rigged with confetti cannons. The goal wasn't just inconvenience. It was humiliation. A mess so massive, so impossible to ignore, that the Walkers could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. That week, Maplewood Lane felt electric. Neighbors smiled at one another with secret grins. Conversations paused when Jacob walked by. Children were told to keep quiet, but couldn't resist giggling whenever the Walkers appeared. The Walkers, meanwhile, carried on as if they were untouchable. Melissa even joked one evening, "We should start a blog on bargain hunting. We're practically experts now." Daniel had to bite his tongue so hard, he nearly laughed in her face. On Thursday evening, the neighborhood gathered one last time in the Harris garage. The air was thick with excitement. "Tomorrow's the day," Daniel said, clapping his hands. "We don't interfere. We don't hint. We just wait. Once they take the bait, we let it unfold." "What if they get suspicious?" someone asked nervously. "They won't," Claire reassured. "They've stolen everything so far. They won't stop now." The group fell into laughter, imagining the scene. Glitter clouds, squeals, chaos. The Walkers scrambling. The thought alone was enough to keep them buzzing long after everyone went home. The sun rose over Maplewood Lane with unusual brightness, as if even the weather knew something was about to happen. One by one, delivery trucks pulled in, dropping off identical-looking packages on different porches. Claire watched from behind her curtains. Daniel stood beside her, arms crossed, heart pounding with anticipation. Across the street, the Walker kids were already playing in the yard. Jacob stretched on the porch with his coffee. Melissa fussed with her flowers. Everything looked normal, too normal, until Jacob noticed the first box. He picked it up casually, glanced at the label, and carried it inside. Then another. And another. Melissa followed with a third, grinning like she'd stumbled on buried treasure. By noon, 4 of the glitter bombs were inside the Walker home. The 5th still sat on the Patel porch, but nobody doubted where it would end up. The neighborhood held its collective breath. Because any minute now, the real show would begin. Friday afternoon on Maplewood Lane was unusually quiet. Every neighbor who had joined the pact was indoors, tucked behind curtains, phones in hand, pretending to go about their day while secretly watching for the moment they had all been waiting for. Inside the Harris home, Claire tried to keep her kids calm, though even Maya and Lucas had picked up on the strange, exciting energy in the air. "What's happening?" Maya whispered. "Why is everyone acting weird?" Claire only smiled. "Just watch." Around 3 p.m. it happened. A shriek tore through the Walker house, followed by a sound like a small explosion. A cloud of fine, sparkling glitter burst from the open window, catching the sunlight as it floated into the yard. Claire slapped her hand over her mouth, eyes wide. Daniel doubled over laughing. "Is that—" Claire started. "Oh my God, it worked." Daniel wheezed. Across the street, the Walker kids ran out the front door, coughing and spitting, their hair and faces shimmering with pink and gold dust. Behind them, Melissa stormed out, her shirt covered in sparkles, her expression somewhere between horror and fury. Neighbors peeked out their windows. Some recorded discreet videos. Others simply watched, unable to contain their giggles. The first glitter bomb had detonated beautifully. But the Walkers hadn't yet realized there were more. 10 minutes later, another blast. This one louder, sending confetti and glitter spraying across the living room. A puff of neon blue sparkles blew right out the open front door. "Who keeps sending these?" Melissa's voice rang out, shrill and panicked. "Probably some prank mail," Jacob barked, though his voice trembled. He held a broom, uselessly swiping at the glitter that clung stubbornly to the carpet, to the walls, to their skin. The Harris kids pressed their faces to the window, stifling their giggles. Across the street, the Green family whispered to each other, tears of laughter running down their cheeks. Everywhere the Walkers turned, the mess grew worse. Their kids tracked glitter through the kitchen. Their dog rolled in it and shook it across the sofa. The harder they tried to clean, the more it spread. It was unstoppable. But the Walkers hadn't yet realized there were more. 10 minutes later, another blast. This one louder, sending confetti and glitter spraying across the living room. A puff of neon blue sparkles blew right out the open front door. "Who keeps sending these?" Melissa's voice rang out, shrill and panicked. "Probably some prank mail," Jacob barked, though his voice trembled. He held a broom, uselessly swiping at the glitter that clung stubbornly to the carpet, to the walls, to their skin. The Harris kids pressed their faces to the window, stifling their giggles. Across the street, the Green family whispered to each other, tears of laughter running down their cheeks. Everywhere the Walkers turned, the mess grew worse. Their kids tracked glitter through the kitchen. Their dog rolled in it and shook it across the sofa. The harder they tried to clean, the more it spread. It was unstoppable. By evening, all 5 glitter bombs had gone off. The Walker house looked like a carnival had exploded inside. Glitter coated every surface, every crevice. Their once pristine home now sparkled like a disco ball, visible even from the street. Melissa sat on the porch steps, hair wild, arms streaked with pink dust. Jacob paced angrily, phone in hand. "This is harassment," he shouted to no one in particular. "We'll sue, do you hear me? We'll sue whoever's doing this." But his voice carried no weight. Because everyone in the neighborhood had seen what came before. The missing packages, the stolen items, the lies. Nobody believed them. On Monday morning, as if the glitter wasn't bad enough, the Walkers received a formal notice taped to their front door. Eviction. The landlord had heard about the complaints, the stolen packages, the chaos. The glitter disaster was the final straw. When Melissa read the letter aloud, her voice cracked. Jacob snatched it from her hands, his face pale. Their kids, still finding stray sparkles in their hair, sat quietly on the porch steps, confused and embarrassed. The neighbors, meanwhile, felt a weight lift. They didn't cheer, didn't celebrate openly because that wasn't necessary. The message had been delivered. And this time, it wasn't in a package. That evening, the Walkers made one last attempt. Melissa marched across the street to the Harris home, her voice trembling with rage and shame. "This could have been handled privately," she hissed at Claire. "You didn't have to humiliate us like this. We could have resolved it like adults." Claire's expression stayed calm. She didn't deny, didn't admit, just looked Melissa straight in the eye and said quietly, "Maybe you should have thought about that before you took what wasn't yours." Melissa's face flushed red, but she had no response. She turned on her heel and stormed back to her glitter-coated house. By the end of the week, the Walkers were gone. A moving truck hauled away their belongings, glitter still shimmering faintly on every box they carried out. The entire neighborhood gathered that evening on the Harris lawn, kids chasing fireflies while parents sipped drinks and laughed freely for the first time in months. For once, Maplewood Lane was at peace. The Walkers had come with smiles and charm, but they left in disgrace, their perfect facade shattered in a storm of glitter. And as Daniel raised his glass to the group, he said what everyone was thinking. To justice, Maplewood style. The laughter that followed carried down the block, warm and unburdened. because at last the neighborhood was theirs again. The Walkers' glitter-stained exit became the talk of Maplewood Lane for weeks. It wasn't just the eviction notice or the moving truck parked in front of their house. It was the way they left. Boxes covered in sparkles were hauled out by sweaty movers. Every time a box hit the truck bed, a fine mist of glitter puffed into the air. Even the movers joked about it. "Man, what happened in there?" One of them muttered loudly enough for the Harris kids to overhear. The kids burst into giggles, and Claire had to pull them inside before the Walkers noticed. Still, the spectacle was impossible to ignore. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some openly standing on their lawns, arms crossed, watching the disgraced family scramble. For the first time since they moved in, the Walkers weren't the center of admiration. They were the center of humiliation. On the morning of their final day, Jacob Walker snapped. He stormed across the street to the Harris house, his face red, his hair still dusted with flecks of gold glitter. Daniel opened the door cautiously, Claire standing just behind him. "You think this is funny?" Jacob snarled, jabbing a finger at Daniel's chest. "You and your little group, setting us up, ruining our home, turning everyone against us. This is harassment." Daniel's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Claire stepped forward, calm but firm. "Jacob," she said evenly, "nobody turned anyone against you. You did that all on your own when you started stealing from us. All we did was give you back a taste of what you'd been taking." Jacob sputtered, looking for words, but none came. His rage faltered into something closer to shame. Behind him, Melissa stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, eyes glassy with tears. "Let's go," she muttered. "It's over." For the first time since they'd moved in, Jacob didn't argue. He turned away, shoulders slumped, and trudged back across the street. The departure. By evening, the Walkers were gone. The moving truck rumbled away, leaving behind only a faint shimmer of glitter on the driveway that sparkled in the setting sun. The house stood empty, quiet, stripped of the false cheer that had once made it seem so inviting. For the neighbors, it was as if a storm had finally passed. Children ran freely across lawns again. Porch conversations returned. Packages sat on doorsteps without fear. Maplewood Lane breathed, finally unburdened. Healing and reflection. That weekend, the Harris family hosted a neighborhood cookout. For the first time in months, every family attended, laughing, sharing food, and celebrating not just the Walkers' departure, but their own unity. Claire looked around the yard, smiling as she watched the kids play tag under the fading sunlight. The Green family shared jokes with the Patels. Mr. Ramirez told a story that had everyone roaring with laughter. "This feels right again," Daniel said quietly, slipping an arm around Claire's shoulders. She nodded. "It does. It feels like home again." The final word. As the evening drew to a close, Mrs. Patel raised her glass for a toast. "To neighbors who stick together," she said with a mischievous grin. Everyone lifted their cups, the clinking sound echoing in the warm air. "And," Daniel added with a smirk, "to glitter, the one thing they'll never get rid of." The group burst into laughter, a sound full of relief and joy. Maplewood Lane had been tested by lies, theft, and betrayal. But in the end, justice had been served, not with anger, but with creativity, patience, and just enough sparkle to last a lifetime. And as the night sky filled with stars, one thing was certain: the neighborhood would never again underestimate the power of unity. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. What other hilarious or fitting package traps do you think the neighborhood should have pulled?